Welcome back. If you're wondering why the world feels a little lighter today, it's because all the hot air has ascended to the Swiss Alps. The globalist prom is in full swing. Davos, the magic mountain, the place where the people who broke the world gather to congratulate themselves on how nicely the pieces are shattering. And who is the keynote speaker at this festival of mediocrity? Who is standing there, a glass of champagne in hand, lecturing the Europeans? Donald Trump, the anti-globalist king, holding court at the temple of globalism. You can't make this stuff up. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a guillotine. He's up there warning Europe to drop the old playbook. And for once, just for once, he's accidentally right, but not for the reasons he thinks. The old playbook was pretending that everything was fine. It was the playbook where we pretended international law mattered, where we pretended debt didn't exist, and where we pretended that printing money was the same thing as creating wealth. But look at the split screen, folks. Just look at it. On one side, you have the beautiful snow-capped peaks of Switzerland, where the menu probably costs more than your mortgage. Everyone is smiling. Everyone is safe. On the other side, the map is bleeding. In Venezuela, we're seeing raids. In the Middle East, Iran is threatening to empty the silo and retaliate with everything we have. In Asia, Taiwan is paralyzed. And what is the response from the masters of the universe in Davos? They're issuing press releases. They're forming committees. They are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but they've upgraded to platinum-class seats, so they think they aren't going to get wet. The old playbook is dead. The new playbook isn't a strategy. It's a scramble. It's a chaotic, desperate grab for whatever assets haven't been nailed down yet. They aren't leading the world anymore. They are looting the building before the condemnation notice gets taped to the front door. And nowhere is this panic more obvious, more pathetic, and more dangerous than in what I like to call the great real estate swap. Let's talk about real estate, because apparently foreign policy in 2026 isn't about alliances or values anymore. It's about Zillow. It's about square footage. We have two major stories hitting the wire today, and if you look at them separately, they look like standard diplomatic noise. But if you put them together, you see the picture of an empire in total schizophrenic collapse. The United Kingdom, our closest ally, the people who are supposed to be the adults in the room, is handing over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Now, the media is selling this to you with a very specific, very sugary coating. They call it decolonization. They call it restoring sovereignty. They say it's a triumph of international law. Let's translate that into English, shall we? The UK is abandoning a strategic choke point in the Indian Ocean because they don't have the spine to tell a tiny island nation and the UN court to go pound sand. But Claus, they say, we have a lease. We're leasing back the military base on Diego Garcia for 99 years. It's fine. A lease. You're renting your own security. Let me ask you a question. Who is Mauritius cozying up to? Who has been pouring money into Mauritius infrastructure like it's going out of style? If you said the Chinese Communist Party, give yourself a gold star. So here is the real truth. We are handing the title deed of our most critical Indian Ocean base, the unsinkable aircraft carrier that allows us to project power into the Middle East and Africa, to a landlord who is taking payday loans from Beijing. What happens in 5 years when Mauritius decides the rent is too low? What happens when they decide the environmental impact of U.S. bombers is too high? What happens when China offers them double the rent to evict us? Do you think a piece of paper is going to stop them? Do you think international law matters when the eviction notice is backed by the People's Liberation Army Navy? This is weakness, pure and simple. It is the West liquidating its assets in the South because it is too tired, too broke, and too guilt-ridden to hold the line. It is a surrender. Now, while the British are giving away tropical islands, what is the United States doing? Donald Trump is back to trying to buy Greenland. You remember this hit from the first term, right? Everyone laughed. He wants to buy an island. How gauche? Well, he's back at it. The New York Times is reporting a Greenland framework where NATO mulls U.S. sovereignty over bases. Why? Why are we obsessed with a giant block of ice? Because while we are losing the equator, we are terrified of losing the Arctic. Russia is already there. China is calling itself a near-Arctic state, which, by the way, is like me calling myself a near-Olympic athlete because I have a gym membership. The U.S. government looks at the map and realizes, oh no, we gave away the Panama Canal. We're losing the Red Sea. We just handed the Indian Ocean to Mauritius. We have nowhere left to park the car. So they panic, They look north, they see Greenland, it's big, it's empty, it's full of rare earth minerals that we need because we let China monopolize the supply chain for 30 years. And they think we'll just buy that. Do you see the schizophrenia? On Monday, we are decolonizing Diego Garcia because owning land is bad and imperialist. On Tuesday, we are trying to annex Greenland because owning land is good and strategic. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. You can't be a benevolent NGO giving away territory in the south and a ruthless conquistador grabbing territory in the north. Here is what is actually happening. This isn't 4D chess. This is a meth head pawn shop transaction. Imagine you live in a rough neighborhood. The guy down the street hates you. He wants to break into your house. So what do? First, you sell your front gate and your security cameras to a guy who is best friends with the burglar. You do this because you feel bad that your grandfather built the fence on the property line. That's Diego Garcia. You have essentially paid a burglar to install your alarm system. Then, because you realize you are now completely defenseless, you run into the backyard and try to forcibly buy your neighbor's deep freezer so you can hide your jewelry inside it. That's Greenland. You haven't made your house safer. You've just made your kitchen colder. The official lie is that these are separate issues. They tell you Diego Garcia is about justice and Greenland is about security. The real truth is that they are both about retreat. We are retreating from the world. We are pulling back from the messy, complicated, hot parts of the globe where actual people live and actual trade happens. We are consolidating the empire into a fortress. North America, the Arctic, the UK maybe. We are circling the wagons. But instead of circling them around the valuable stuff, we're circling them around a snowbank because we're too afraid to fight for the shipping lanes. It's pathetic, it's desperate, and the worst part, it's not going to work. Because when you signal to the world that everything is for sale, that your sovereignty is negotiable and your allies are temporary, you don't get peace, you get a bidding war. And right now, we are running out of chips. But hey, at least the hors d'oeuvres in Davos are warm, right? We haven't even talked about the other fires yet. Let's talk about Taiwan. Let's talk about the check that's bouncing before it's even written. You know, it would be comforting to believe that these people are just stupid. I really mean that. It would be nice to go to sleep at night thinking, well, the State Department is just full of well-meaning interns who accidentally mailed the keys to the Indian Ocean to the wrong address. We could forgive stupidity. Stupidity is human. But this isn't stupidity, and it isn't an accident. If you step back from the map, if you stop looking at Greenland and Diego Garcia as isolated incidents and start looking at the timeline, you see the pattern. It's undeniable. We are watching the private equity takeover of the Western world. Think about how a private equity firm strips a dying company. They don't try to save it. They don't try to make a better product. They sell off the valuable assets. Greenland, they cut the expensive maintenance costs. Diego Garcia, they load the company with debt, the omnibus spending bills, and they pay themselves massive consulting fees while the workers get laid off. That is your foreign policy. That is your government. It is a liquidation sale disguised as a strategy, and the proof is right there in the other headlines we're seeing today. Look at Taiwan. We are being told explicitly that Taiwan is the most important place on earth. We are being told that we have to be ready to send our sons and daughters to fight the Chinese Navy in the Taiwan Strait. We are risking World War III nuclear fire, the end of civilization, to protect the island of Taiwan. So you would assume that Taiwan is treating this with the same level of urgency, right? You would assume they are turning their entire island into a fortress. Taiwan's $40 billion military spending plan stalled by political impasse. Stalled. A political impasse. The United States is preparing to potentially sacrifice Los Angeles to save Taipei, and the politicians in Taipei are arguing about the budget. They can't agree to sign the check. This fits the pattern perfectly. It's the protection racket where the bodyguard cares more about the client's life than the client does. Why? Because the money isn't meant for defense. It's meant for the defense industry. If Taiwan actually wanted to be safe, they'd be arming every citizen and mining the beaches. But they aren't. They're buying big, expensive, shiny American weapon systems that look good in parades but will be blown up in the first 10 minutes of a war. It's a grift. We print the money, we loan it to them, they use it to buy weapons from our donors, and the politicians on both sides take a cut. Meanwhile, you get the inflation and you get the draft card. And while the money is being laundered in the Pacific, look at what's happening in the Middle East. The New York Times tells us today about the U.S. pivot in Syria. And the headline is almost honest for once, says it leaves an old ally in the lurch. Sound familiar? We did it in Vietnam, we did it in Afghanistan, we did it to the Kurds in 2019, now we're doing it to them again in 2026. We go in, we destabilize the region. We promise the locals freedom and democracy if they fight for us. They bleed for us. Then the moment the political winds change in Washington, the moment the polls dip or the budget gets tight, we pack up the helicopters and leave them to the wolves. And look at the reaction. Iran is warning they will retaliate with everything we have. This is the pump and dump of geopolitics. We pump up a conflict, flood the zone with weapons, create a dependency, and then we dump the ally the second they become a liability. The result? Chaos. Who benefits from chaos? Well, the oil price goes up. That's good for the energy sector. The threat level goes up. That's good for the surveillance state. The fear goes up. That's good for control. This is the connection. This is why your grocery bill is $400. This is why they want to censor the internet. This is why they are terrified of you asking questions. Because if you actually look at the ledger, you realize that the Western Empire isn't being defeated by external enemies. It is being cannibalized by its own managers. They are selling the sovereignty of the perimeter Diego Garcia to pay for the fortification of the core Greenland. They are using the threat of war Taiwan to launder tax dollars back into the military-industrial complex. They are using the chaos of retreat Syria to justify more domestic control. It's not a mistake that they are dropping the old playbook, as Trump says. The old playbook required maintaining a functioning civilization. The new playbook is about extracting as much value as possible from the wreckage before the whole thing collapses. They aren't trying to win the game anymore, folks. They're just trying to cash out their chips before the casino burns down, and the only thing standing between them and the exit is us noticing. But surely there's a plan for us, right? Surely once they've sold the islands and abandoned the allies, they'll secure the homeland. Don't bet on it. Because while they're playing risk with the map, the bill is coming due right here at home. But wait, there's more. Because the stupidity doesn't stop at the water's edge. It's a global franchise. Let's do the lightning round. Item 1, Taiwan. We are constantly told that the defense of Taiwan is the hill Western civilization must die on. And yet the New York Times tells us the $40 billion military spending plan is stalled by political impasse. Let me get this straight. You have the Red Dragon breathing down your neck. You have amphibious assault ships doing laps around your island, and your parliament is arguing about paperwork. This is the Kellerman logic. If you want the bodyguard to take a bullet for you, you have to pay for the Kevlar. If you can't pass a budget to save your own existence, don't expect a kid from Ohio to care more about your freedom than you do. It's not a fortress of democracy. It's a DMV with a flag. Item 2, the pivot in Syria. Headline, U.S. pivot in Syria leaves an old ally in the lurch. Pivot. That's the polite word for running away. It's the same word they used for the pivot to Asia, which really meant let the Middle East burn. We are leaving the Kurds again. At this point, it's not a betrayal, it's a tradition, it's an annual event. And look at the result. Iran is warning they will retaliate with everything we have. So let's recap the board. We are retreating from the hot zone where the actual missiles are aimed to go by ice cubes in Greenland, where the penguins live. We are trading a war we can't win for a piece of land we can't use. Item 3, Venezuela, U.S. raid in Venezuela. While we're busy selling off the empire in the East, we're kicking down doors in the South. Why? Because when you're failing globally, you have to look tough locally. It's the geopolitical equivalent of a guy who gets fired from his job and comes home to kick the dog. It's frantic, it's incoherent, it's the flailing of a giant that has lost its balance. So what does all this mean for you? It means you need to stop listening to the speeches coming out of Davos. You need to stop listening to the press secretaries telling you about frameworks and alliances. Watch the feet, not the mouth. The feet are moving. They are moving away from the world. They are moving away from the obligations of the last 80 years. The West is shrinking. We are pulling back to the core, Greenland, North America, the Five Eyes. We are building a fortress and letting the periphery burn. They call it a pivot, I call it a retreat. They are preparing for a smaller, colder, harder world. A world where international law is a joke, where allies are disposable, and where the only thing that matters is what you can physically hold on to. If they are preparing for that world, why are you still living in the old one? Don't wait for the government to save you. They're too busy auctioning off the lifeboats. Secure your own perimeter. Get your own house in order, because the empire is having a going out of business sale, and you do not want to be the one holding the bag when the doors lock. Keep your powder dry and your thermostat low. It's getting cold out there.